what do you like? Tell me what you like.
There's value in that because it almost gives the brain like a vacation, right?
Holistic health is completely underappreciated, but so critical. Eating whole foods, and the key is just to find something that you really enjoy.
Welcome to the NAMP Nourishing You podcast. I'm Kristen Burkett.
And I'm Diana Wally. We're your hosts for NAMP's podcast dedicated to connecting holistic health enthusiasts with each other to share practical information from the holistic wellness space for enhanced vitality.
Diana and I are master nutrition therapists, board certified in holistic nutrition with private practices and an online joint venture that supports clients and practitioners as they strive to reach their full potential. We're honored to be hosting this podcast for NAMP and connecting our listeners with the latest in holistic wellness.
And if you enjoyed today's show, help us out by commenting below, liking this video, and subscribing to the channel to help us spread the word.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Nourishing You podcast. We're thrilled to bring Dr. Diane Mueller to you today to talk about the power of mindfulness in your holistic life. As a survivor of IBS, Lyme disease, and mold illness, Dr. Mueller is passionate about bringing research, understanding, and compassion to those with these diseases. She co-authored a book released in May of 2021 called Use Your Mind to Heal Your Mold and Lyme, which can be found on Amazon. Her practice, the Medicine with Heart Clinic, treats those around the country. She also co-owns an online functional medicine school, the Medicine with Heart Institute, where she trains clinicians around the world in functional medicine. Dr. Diane's journey to heal herself led her to complete 2 doctorate degrees in holistic healthcare. She has a doctorate degree in naturopathic medicine, as well as a doctorate degree in acupuncture and oriental medicine. In addition, she's certified in functional medicine. Dr. Diane is well respected as a national speaker and educator, and is known all over the country as a functional medicine expert that other doctors seek for advice on advanced chronic cases and disease reversal. Welcome, Dr. Diane. We're so honored to have you with us today.
I'm so honored to be here with you ladies. Thank you for having me.
So we feel so fortunate that we've had the opportunity to know you and learn from you over the years, in our own practices. And for me, on a personal level, you've helped my family with some health challenges. So you're very special in my life. And just thank you for so much for what you've contributed to holistic practitioners all over the world. We appreciate you. So to get us started, we'd love to hear a recap of your story and how you came into the holistic field of nutrition, and then your current area of focus.
Absolutely. So it was quite a journey for me. It started with IBS, like you guys mentioned in the bio, when I was a young child. And that largely was what got me into studying more natural medicine. That's what got me into naturopathic medical school, was because I had that classic IBS label. And nobody could figure out what was going on with me. All the normal tests, here's the label, take some laxatives, send me on my way kind of thing. And so that got me into holistic medicine because I just felt so strongly like there had to be a root cause, an answer. I'm a scientist and I think a data-driven person by nature. So that got me into school. And what really began my journey, though, didn't even start with the IBS. It really actually started when I was in school. And I started having some really crazy symptoms, like what I now know is called depersonalization, where it would almost feel like my brain, my consciousness was like detached from my body. And it was really disorientation, or disorienting. Sometimes when this would happen, I would forget where I would live. I could sometimes be just blocks from my house and get so turned around, I didn't know where home was. I would have with that, and sometimes with, on its own, these episodes where my hands would go so incredibly numb that if I was driving, I was having a hard time, feeling the steering wheel. I'd have to pull over. And so these things were very, very scary, right? And then throughout medical school, when I would talk to others or I would get lab testing done, and everything was always normal on my lab test. So when I would have lab testing done, it was normal. And I would talk to other supervising docs. Everybody was like, you're fine. This is just medical school syndrome. And it wasn't until I graduated and so many of my friends and colleagues were saying they were recovered from school. They were feeling like their old self again. And at this point, I had gotten so bad that I was having to be carried up and down stairs at some points because I couldn't walk. I was mentally at a place where I was thinking about moving to a deserted island because I really thought I was dying. I didn't know of what. And then eventually I discovered that it was Lyme disease, mold illness, and about a half dozen other things that are not commonly tested for, even oftentimes around holistic care providers. So that was my journey, a huge part of my journey, because it was so incredibly debilitating, was really enacting that powerful will, that will we have as human beings to survive. And I really believe that as much as all the physical things I did around nutrition and supplements and all those things were pivotal to my well-being and to my healing, another pivotal component was really getting this will going for myself. And that was a lot of the mindfulness. It was a lot of working on the mind. It was a lot of meditation. It was a lot of visualization and Qigong and these types of things that we're going to talk about this episode were absolutely pivotal to getting my mind involved, to getting my parasympathetic nervous system involved, and to really putting myself into that healing state that eventually led me to be the place that I am now in my 40s, where I feel healthier and better in my body than I did when I was in my 20s.
Wow. Your story is so amazing. And I mean, every time I hear you speak, I learn something more about you and your journey and the whole process. And I'm amazed every time. I really believe that one of the reasons you're so incredible in this field is because of this mindfulness that you bring to functional medicine. And I think it's a big component that's really missing in a lot of practices and in a lot of people's lives just from day to day. And I think it really makes you stand out. And obviously it's a testimonial to your healing and part of your journey as well. So I'm really excited to dig into this with you. You've given us a little bit of context with why it's important, but can you expand a little bit more on why you think mindfulness in general is so important for anyone who's just wanting to be healthier in their own life, let alone a healing journey?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is this impact on our parasympathetic nervous system that so many times when we are ill, especially when we're chronically ill, we are stuck in that sympathetic overdrive, that fight or flight. And it really is a normal response, right? Because being sick, especially being sick for a long time, our body goes into survival mode. We want to survive as these living organisms deeply on a cellular level. And so when we're ill, it's so easy for our sympathetic nervous system to kick on, which for those of you that don't know that's like that fight or flight, that like adrenaline, run from a tiger, close call with a car. And, when you're driving, these types of feelings. And so the thing of it is, like, most people know what it's like to be in that adrenaline type of state, right? Our heart starts beating faster oftentimes. We don't think as clear. Sometimes we speak really fast. We move really fast. And one of the challenges with that when it comes to health is when we are in that part of our nervous system, we're not sending the signals to our body to heal, to repair, these sorts of things. So it's like this vicious cycle, right? We get sick, we get ill. And what winds up happening then is our nervous system goes on overdrive. We're releasing all this adrenaline, which is essentially sending a signal to our body that says, we don't have time to heal right now. And so then we get worse. And oftentimes we release more adrenaline and respond differently to the adrenaline. We're stuck in this cycle. And so it's the other major part of our autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic, which some people know as rest and digest. But the parasympathetic, this other part of our nervous system, does so many things, right? It does so many things for us. And one of the things this part of our nervous system does is it sends out that healing signal that says repair. So largely what we're working to do when it comes to health and disease, from a science perspective is we're really working to engage that part of our nervous system that says to repair, so that when this part of our nervous system sends out that signal, we're releasing chemicals and molecules and signals all over the body that are causing our inflammation to go down, that are causing us to digest more, that are causing these cellular repair cycles to basically turn on so that we can begin to heal ourselves. And it's one of those things where it's like supplements and diet and lifestyle, absolutely a pillar. We have to do that. And if we don't do the other work to get our mind involved and get this parasympathetic nervous system involved, we're missing a key component. Like, I would never tell anybody to work on the mind and not work on the body, right? It's important what we eat. And I think most people listening know that. And the same is conversely true with working on doing all of this great stuff for the body and getting the body on board. It's important that we do these types of activities to get the mind in that state of sending those signals for healing.
I think that's the first time I've heard someone explicitly say how important the parasympathetic nervous system is for healing. Yeah. That's absolutely fascinating. And it reminds me of an interesting analogy I heard that I'd love your feedback on. That, we all know that exercise, regular exercise done appropriately, of course, is super important. But what if all we did 24 hours a day was exercise? Okay. So eventually it wouldn't be good for you because, it would become counterproductive. Our body couldn't heal, to your point. So, if we think about that with the mind and we spend all day thinking, ruminating, without allowing our minds to rest and getting into that parasympathetic state, our minds become exhausted. It's an interesting analogy, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, that goes both ways, right? If we sit all day and just meditate all day, obviously that's not good for the body. And I think it's such a great conversation we're having today, because so many times I see one of these things that happen is that it's polarized. We get so excited to work on the mind, or we get so excited to work on the body. And, both of these things are really involved. So I love that analogy that we can go too far with any of these things and forget about the value of the other.
So I think, one of the interesting things that reminds me of is when I work with clients, I feel like this mindfulness component may be the hardest piece to bring in to working with people, whether it's a healing journey or just trying to maintain good health, whatever it is, because it seems like it's so much easier to do the other things, to take a supplement, to walk in the sunshine, to get your exercise, to go to bed at a certain time. But to actually dedicate time to mindfulness is really difficult in our society. But I think, like you said, it's a linchpin to making whatever that journey is successful. So I love that you've incorporated this, and I'm curious how you add that to your practice. Like, how do you communicate the importance of that and make that, a key piece of their platform?
Yeah, it's such a good point. There's a movie that I actually reference in my book, Good Will Hunting, for anybody that's seen that movie. And there's one line in that movie that really stuck with me for some reason over the years. And I don't even remember the scene. I don't remember the movie that well, but the line was, you're sitting on a winning lottery ticket and you're too afraid to cash it in. And that's how I feel the mind is. It's like, it's a free tool. It's a tool that any of us can access to help ourselves in any situation. In any situation, we can access our mind. And yet it is one of the hardest things, like you mentioned, Kristen, is like one of the hardest things to help people kind of wrap their brains around and not have resistance around. So I do like orienting people to kind of this concept that I just said around, like, yeah, this is hard stuff. But it's also like one of the only things that I can do for you and teach you that is 100% free, that you have access to for the rest of your life without even having any help. So, sometimes that can help people. And the other thing that I have found, especially when it comes to like the meditation component of mindfulness, because meditation, we could say, is really one branch of a way to achieve mindfulness. And so many people not only are resistant to it, but they're resistant to it because they think they cannot do it. And this is really interesting. And it's a misunderstanding, especially when it comes to more like the meditation side of things. It's a misunderstanding of what meditation is, because so many people think that meditation is like sitting in stillness and just having nothing happen. It's really not what like meditation is. That's more of a result of what can happen when you practice meditation. But meditation, all it really is tracking the mind, just sitting still and trying to quiet the mind and realizing when the mind has wandered. So it's funny because people will come and they'll say, well, I can't meditate. And they'll say like, okay, well, what happens? And they say, well, my mind wanders. I'm like, did you notice your mind wandered? They're like, yeah, that's what I'm telling you. And then my response is like, that actually is meditation. So it's a really cool frame for people to start wrapping their brain around like, usually when you think you are not meditating, that's actually what meditation is. And the more we practice and we notice like, oh, my brain's going this way. Oh, my brain, my brain's on this story. My brain's on that story. My brain's doing the list, whatever it is. The more we notice and say, okay, still brain. The more times we notice, the more space there will eventually be between our thoughts. But that's a result of meditation. Meditation is just being aware of the mind. And the idea with this, when it comes to health, is like, common thing that we probably all see in working with people with chronic illness. It's so easy. Like, and I know it firsthand. It's one of the reasons I tell my story is it's so easy for the mind and disease to start saying things like, oh, my pain's really bad today. Oh my God, I can't get out of bed. Oh my God, I can't eat. Am I ever going to be well? Am I going to be this like this forever? And the mind just goes on this, journey, right? Well, every time the mind does that, it's sending adrenaline and cortisol through the system. So we're not healing when we're having these sorts of thoughts. And so part of healing in part of the point of like doing mindfulness types of practices where we notice these thoughts is to actually notice we're having them and then bring our mind back to things that are more healing type of thoughts of saying something like, okay, well, I'm not healed yet, but I trust that I am on a path and I will eventually get there, or whatever sort of thought is more calming and gentle. And so when, to kind of bring it back to your question, when I do talk to people about the importance of this, one of the things that I really like to describe is this whole thing around what we're doing with this. The purpose of this is to interrupt the thought pattern that's sending the adrenaline that's telling you not to heal. And when we can interrupt that, we can start sending the signals to heal. So the couple times I've really seen the couple things that we've implemented in our practice as far as how I communicate with clients that have been most helpful are these couple of things. One, hey, this is your $1 million ticket and it's free and you're not even cashing it in, And then secondly, this concept around like, this is really what's happening. Like you can actually do this. And here's the benefit. Here's why you're doing it. It's not just because it's good for your health. It's actually because it's going to interrupt something that's preventing you from having and living the life that you were born to live.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing like different ways that you can meditate for our audience? Because I think there's a misconception that meditation has to be done in a very traditional way, which can be off-putting to some people. But can you explain some different types of meditation and like how much time a day somebody needs to commit to it to see some benefit?
Yeah, it's a really important thing. And I really want to make sure in this episode, we're really delineating like the word meditation can sometimes have like a secular, meaning to it. And let's just take this out. Like there's definitely ways you can do this from a spiritual perspective, and it can contain that. But it does not have to contain that. And there's many ways to meditate that are just purely about working on your sympathetic nervous system, working on the controlling of your thoughts and sending the healing signals. So it does not have to relate to any sort of religion or spiritual practice. It can, but it doesn't have to. So I want to make sure that's really clear for everybody. And we can do meditation as simple as by doing breath work. It doesn't have to be anything that's super, say, out of the realm of oftentimes what we think of in other healthy areas. We know breath work is super beneficial. There's a lot of research on breath work, and breath work is a form of meditation. We are focusing on our breath and only our breath. And so one of the breath works that I personally love, like probably my favorite one ever, actually is something that used to be used and maybe even still is by the Navy SEALs for training. And it's box breathing. And box breathing is really simple. You just breathe in for a count. So say you would breathe in for a count of 3. You would hold for a count of 3. You would breathe out for a count of 3. And then you would hold for a count of 3. And then you would do that 4. And then you would do the cycle of 5. And you would just continue up until your holds got to about the maximum amount where you felt like you could hold, and stretch your lungs, but still be fine. And then typically you would walk back down the ladder. So if you got to 13, then you would go around to 12, around 11, and back down. So that's one of my favorite styles of breathing. There's also things like Buteyko breathing and Wim Hof breathing that we do teach. Some of my staff are trained in these sorts of techniques. And so we do teach our clients those types of breathing patterns as well. But breath work is a great form of meditation. There's definitely guided meditations. UCLA has some great resources. So if you just type in like UCLA free meditations, they have a page of really great resources of things that are just like a 2-minute meditation all the way up to, I can't remember their longest, but it's substantially longer. And so sometimes, people do well with guided meditations, and that can be a wide variety of things. An example of the guided meditation is like something called progressive relaxation. Progressive relaxation looks like where you're just relaxing your head, relaxing your neck, relaxing your shoulders, and really moving yourself down in your body. And with any of these techniques, what we're really doing is focusing the mind. And so what will happen for most people is at some point, you'll notice that your mind will likely go and think about kids or work or your list or whatever. And you'll notice like, where am I in my count? Am I on 6? Am I on 7? And have I relaxed my shoulders? Where am I? But it doesn't matter. You just kind of pick up somewhere and just keep going. It's not really about remembering where you are. That's not, we can get lost in that unimportant detail. Again, it's just about remembering and coming back. So those are all different, different types of meditation. There's visualization types of meditation where we're actually visualizing our future, these sorts of things. There's various types of meditation where we're actually breathing in the pain of the world. And that sounds kind of intense, right? But the idea in meditation like that, we breathe in the pain of the world. We're actually in our body and with our mind, imagining that we're transforming that pain, and we're breathing out and imagining love going to the world and healing. And of course, with the current state of society right now, that's a really great, great, powerful meditation to be doing. There's transcendental meditation. So there's a lot of different styles of meditation. There's a lot of different styles of mindfulness. The number one thing that I like people to know is like, these are all largely different paths to the same point. And so what I tell our clients is like true. I feel like what I would tell anybody is, we're trained in some at our practice, and those are the ones we teach, but it's not about this one versus that one. It's more about finding something that works for you, that you resonate with, that's something that you're enjoying enough where you can commit to. And that's what I would stick to. It's not that this one is better than that one. It's whatever one you resonate with the most is the one that is, for you. And in answer to your time question, frequency is better than length, meaning like it would be way better to do a little bit every day than to do, say, a very long one once a week. And so anything is better than nothing. If you have 2 minutes to commit a day, don't think you can't get value. You can. But I would rather have somebody commit to 2 minutes every day and have success with it than commit to even 15 minutes every day and not be successful. Mm-hmm. So I would really think about this as, what is that minimum amount that you're having the worst day ever? Everything's going wrong. What is the minimum amount on your worst day ever that you can do? And if it's 45 seconds, I would encourage you to commit to 45 seconds every day, because you're not going to lose then. And the more repetition that you give your brain that says, I did this on a really hard day, that's going to kick on dopamine receptors, the pleasure reward receptors in your brain that are going to say, wow, I did this on a really hard day. All right, I can do it again tomorrow.
This gives me such comfort. I know Kristen and I have talked a lot about the fact that meditation can be challenging for us, but recently I went with a friend to a meditation retreat. It was just a daytime thing. But of course, the whole time I'm thinking, am I doing this right? I don't think I'm doing this right. We're supposed to be meditating and I'm, being self-critical. So this gives me great comfort and I'm going to give it another go.
Yay. Yeah. The other comment I'll say on that is we, a while back, this was probably 4 or 5 years ago, I was at a meditation conference and our teacher asked, she's like, who thinks meditation's boring? And like everybody was looking around and nobody raises their hand. And she's like, of course it's boring sometimes. Like, sometimes it can be super interesting and super profound and and it's like, you can feel all these like really cool things happening. And I've been meditating since 2004. And like, sometimes it's just boring. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. That doesn't mean anything. It is boring to people that, it's like my teacher who's been doing this for decades and decades and decades is saying this. Yeah. So it can be boring sometimes. And again, reorienting to the reason and the purpose. Like, well, even if it's boring, if it's going to help me feel better, okay, I'll sit here for another minute or another 5 minutes or whatever it is that we commit to.
Well, and saying that the mind is our $1 million ticket, I think you just convinced the entire YouTube world. So
exactly. I love that analogy. I think it's great.
Yeah. So another tool that you just alluded to, liking to use with your patients is breathing techniques. So can you tell us a little bit more about why it's important, any key techniques that you like to incorporate in your practice?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things with breathing is really increasing our CO2 tolerance, our carbon dioxide tolerance. So when we actually have a CO2 in our blood, when our CO2 is high enough, that actually is what is causing oxygen to go into our cells. When our CO2 goes up, our hemoglobin's like, oh, let's get oxygen into our cells. So because the body is sensing that they need them, that the cells need the oxygen. So one of the things that's really common, and this is something that I still to this day have to work on myself with, is mildly hyperventilating. And people don't realize they're doing this, but mildly hyperventilating is basically analogous to really shallow breathing. And so I'm going to over dramatize this. So if we're hyperventilating and we're like, breathing really, really quickly, what winds up happening is we're actually blowing out a lot of carbon dioxide. We're blowing out a lot of CO2. And so that's happening also with shallow breathing because it is actually a form of mild hyperventilation. And when that happens, what winds up happening is the CO2, that carbon dioxide in our blood, goes down. And this is something that we even see sometimes on lab work. And when CO2 goes down, that is not actually sending the signal to our cells to get more oxygen. It's actually telling our cells to not get as much oxygen because it's really that increase, that proper level of CO2 in the body that is actually causing that oxygen to be released from the hemoglobin in the red blood cells. So it's really important when we think about proper oxygenation of the cells, which is really tied to proper functioning of the cells. Cells can't work if they don't have oxygen. So it's really important that in order to have proper oxygenation of our cells, we are actually not over excreting carbon dioxide. And so one of the reasons we really want to do some of these breathing techniques is they're actually raising our carbon dioxide tolerance so that we can get our carbon dioxide levels raised a little bit so that we can actually then properly send the oxygen to our cells. So that's one of the things, because it's like without proper oxygen, the mitochondria, which many people learned in school as the powerhouse of the cell, which for those of you guys that are not in the medical world, basically all that means is that every cell in your body needs to convert the food you ate into usable energy. And the mitochondria are the part of the cell that helps with that creation of your energy from food. And the mitochondria need oxygen in order to do that job. So if we're having the situation where our CO2 is low because of the shallow breathing, we don't get oxygen to the mitochondria. The mitochondria don't get enough energy, or they don't produce enough energy because of that low oxygen. And what winds up happening then is widespread fatigue, oftentimes widespread dysfunction, because cells all over our body really need this energy in order to produce and survive.
Yeah, this is something I have to work on every single day. And it's something that you identified for me many years ago when I was a patient of yours. I hold my breath. I know this now, but like if I'm concentrating on something and with work, or I'm feeling some kind of stress, I tend to hold my breath. And I'm much better now at noticing it and catching it and making myself breathe. And I do it. I keep a breathing reminder on my phone so that I'll, like once an hour, I'll remind myself, make sure you're breathing well. But so I think this is something that happens with everybody, and we see it all the time. Would you be willing to walk us through a short demonstration, and let's all do like a short breathing technique together? And maybe that's something that people can take with them from this episode and use in their daily life.
Yeah, 100%. So let's do some box breathing. So I'll start us out on a count of 4, and we can go up to a count of 8, and then we'll go back down to 4. So this is a good opportunity for everybody. If you are hopefully, if you're listening to this while you're in the kitchen or doing something like this, I encourage everybody to take just a couple moments to really concentrate on this, because it's a good opportunity to tune in to how you're feeling now and what you're noticing in the body. So I would take an opportunity to say, like, do you feel stress in your body? Do you feel any tension? Is your mind really active? So let's start just by taking a quick 5 to 7 seconds check-in with ourselves to see how we feel internally. And I invite you to close your eyes when you do this. And I'm going to count us off now. So starting with an inhale on the count of 4. And then holding for 4. Exhaling for 4. Holding for 4. Then inhaling for 5. Hold that inhale for 5. Exhale for 5. Hold for 5. 6. Hold for 6. Exhale for 6. Hold for 6. Seven, inhaling. Holding for 7. Exhaling for 7. Holding for 7. Eight, inhale. Hold. Exhale for 8. Hold for 8. Inhale for 7. Hold for 7. Exhale for 7. Hold. 6, inhaling. Hold. Exhale. Hold. Fives. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold. 4s. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold. And you can go ahead and breathe normally, but before you guys open your eyes, I would invite you to take also a moment and just notice if there's anything that's different in your body. When you're ready, open your eyes. So how long did we spend on that? Like 3 minutes is my guess? 2 minutes? 4 minutes?
I didn't time it, but it was probably pretty close. Yeah, somewhere around 3 minutes, I think. Yeah.
Kristen, you're going to have to take over because I'm so relaxed. I'm not sure I can focus.
I know. It makes all the difference. And I don't know about you, Diana, but I noticed like halfway through that my breathing changed.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't so forced. It became more natural to breathe in and hold and go through the box. And you felt a shift. I felt a shift in my body during that time. So it's really powerful.
And everything, what I noticed is everything melted away. All the external world just sort of melted away. That was amazing.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah. Is there a particular time of day that you would recommend doing something like this? Is it, morning, bedtime?
It's a great question. One of the things that we often see is those transition times from morning to day or from day to night. So when we're in bed or close to our bed, oftentimes the brain is not totally in that go, go, go mode. For some people it is, but oftentimes either the brain is first waking up or getting really tired. And many times at those points in the day, for many people, they have an easier time getting into that parasympathetic state because their brain's either waking up or is exhausted from the day. So some people, of course, are not like that, but it's something to consider that when we're doing this to really engage the parasympathetic nervous system, sometimes people have the ability to access that place a little bit easier at those points of day. So that's one point to consider. But there's other things to consider too. There's definitely a lot to be said around having a break in the middle of the day when the brain's been on and oftentimes in overdrive, producing and making decisions and, doing all the things the brain does, of giving the brain a little bit of a break. And so we might find that in the middle of the day, we might not be able to get as deep. Not saying it's not possible, but many people will report that in the middle of the day, it's harder for them to get as deep. But that there's value in that because it almost gives the brain like a vacation, right? The brain kind of goes on vacation for a second and there's a reset that can happen. So in general, I would say do whatever time makes the most sense to you and that you're going to commit to. And if you can commit to more than one time, the other thing that I want to bring up is like this concept of the nerves that wire together. Dr. Joe Dispenza, for anybody that knows his work, he says that a lot. And it's so true, right? And so if we have the neural signal of the sympathetic, of the adrenaline, and that neural signal is firing all the time because of life and stress and sickness and whatever we're dealing with, right? It's going to take a little bit of time and sometimes a lot of time to really get that parasympathetic nervous system to send those signals. And so the more times we engage the parasympathetic, the more the nerves and that signal to fire those nerves gets reinforced. So again, nerves that fire together, wire together. And we're trying to, with this whole thing, like what we're doing is we're repatterning so that in a stressful situation, we can actually, with our conscious brain, if we see our brain going into sympathetic, we are actually developing skills where we can override that with our conscious brain with these types of techniques to get our brain and our nervous system more into this healing response. So this is all a long-winded way of saying that if you can find many times throughout the day to even do 45 seconds or a minute, that's oftentimes going to be the best because it's giving that signal over and over again. It's kind of like if you've ever heard somebody talk about learning a new instrument, and it's like better to do a few minutes every day than one big session a week. Yeah. It's the same thing. So if you can do this multiple times every day, if you can do that, that's going to be even better than saying a longer session once a day in the morning about those types of things. And just as a friendly reminder, like I do breath work when I'm in the line at a grocery store. I do breath work when I'm sitting to wait to get on an airplane. I do breath work when I'm waiting in the car to pick up a friend. These types of things. There's so many times where we have these like tiny little moments in our day that we can't really get much done. And we could like scroll through our email, but we could also, we don't really need to check our email 20 times a day. Like a lot of us have a habit of doing, So what we can do in those times, instead of picking up our phone, is like, take 45 seconds, take 60 seconds, do one round of this box breathing. And that's how we can incorporate it in and get those nerves to really wire together.
Love that. I love those ways to incorporate it just in the everyday moments. I think that's great advice. So I want to shift before we run out of time, because there's another area of mindfulness that I know you're very skilled in, and that's Qigong. Am I saying that right?
You are.
Okay. I remember going to a session with your partner, Dr. Miles, a few years back, and I loved it. But honestly, I didn't stick with it. So I'd love to probe more about this. Can you tell us more about what Qigong is, your extent of study, because I know you've done a lot with that, and why it's so powerful in health and healing?
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know this term, Qigong is most analogous to Tai Chi. More people are familiar with Tai Chi than Qigong. Qigong is in many ways like the mother of Tai Chi. So it's movements that are really, really slow, that are very, very ancient. And the idea with these movements there's several different principles behind Qigong, but some of it is really to quiet the mind, to focus the body, to regulate the energy and the way that energy flows in the body. And there has been enough Qigong that's studied. At first this was more of an ancient, Chinese and Japanese and Asian culture technique. And many times it was even used as a technique to calm soldiers before they would go into a battlefield before war, because they would find that it would be so calming to help people be centered and be focused and not anxious in going into these really, really scary situations. And there's been more of Qigong that's been studied, and we know that Qigong has all sorts of different health benefits. We did an internal study in our office where it's a very small case study. So just to be transparent here, we only had 3 people in the study, but what it was, we did their adrenal levels, we did cortisol hormone levels, and we did DHEA hormone levels on a Friday. And then they joined us for a weekend intensive. It was 6 hours on Saturday, 6 hours on Sunday. So nobody was on supplements. It was purely just Qigong. We didn't do anything special to their diet. Everything was just kind of left as it was, but nothing was treated as far as cortisol and DHEA with supplements, and they were instructed not to take anything. So Saturday and Sunday, they did Qigong 6 hours each day. And then Monday we redid, same time of day, cortisol and DHEA. And it was like we knew we were going to get changes, right? But it was like changes that were so monumental. Like DHEA, I also go back and look at the exact numbers, but like the one person was something like 50 and went up to 250. I mean, these are like absurd changes that don't happen with, unless there's like really large supplement boluses. So we did not do a follow-up study, weeks later, but my suspicion is if these people did not keep up their training, which I know for sure one of them did not, that they did not continue to maintain those results. That daily practice is really, really important. But largely one of the benefits of Qigong is it's a different way of doing mindfulness. And it's a different way of practicing meditation. It's a different way of calming the mind. And some people resonate with this a little bit more than, kind of a sit down meditation or a breath work or a lay down meditation, because there is movement. It does give the brain something to focus on. So I've studied a wide variety of Qigong. So I started studying Qigong back in 2004, same year I started meditating. And I studied a wide variety of Qigong, and there's tons of different ways we can practice this, this type of martial arts is really what it is. It's a very slow moving, very, very slow moving form of martial arts that can be done by any age. It can be done by people that are disabled, people that can't get out of bed. It's so accessible. And the current system I actually study now is called something called Shengzhen, which is not typically, they're not calling it Qigong anymore, but it's basically founded out of Qigong. There's a lot of Qigong type of movements. So I'm sharing with you because just to illustrate, there's many different types of forms of Qigong that can be done and practiced.
And I've read that it can even, like on a physiologic level, help with movement inside the body, like movement with lymph, movement with blood flow, and those types of things. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, lymph and blood flow, especially lymph, because our lymphatic vessels do not have any muscle in them. And so we largely move our lymph and our lymph fluid through the lymphatic vessels when we move our skeletal muscles. So if I, do some bicep curls, right, I'm like actually contracting all of the lymph in this area. And so when I do that, then I'm pushing that lymph and moving that lymph up closer to my heart, which is the direction that lymph moves. But one of the things that we see so many times when people are ill and diseased is they're not moving their body. And when we don't move our body, our lymph doesn't move. And the reason this is so problematic is our lymph contains our white blood cells. Our lymph helps with our immune system. Our lymph is also really important for cleaning out the body. It's part of our trash removal system. And so when things get backed up, people can start getting a lot of swelling, and they can start feeling really bad because their toxic burden goes up because they're not able to remove these sorts of things. And another great thing about Qigong is that it is, because it's so low impact, because it can actually be done by people that really feel bad in a laying position. It can be done by people in a sitting position, because all of these things are true. It's a way of making sure the lymph is moving. Even if we feel like we cannot physically move our body, there's still the ability to get that lymph moving and to get that toxic circulation happening, or detoxic thing happening, I should say.
Well, since, all three of us are sitting, is it possible you could give us a little sample that we could do together, and that our listeners, if they're sitting, they can join us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give everybody a moment to find a chair. If you don't have one around, I'm going to push my chair back a little bit so you can see me a little better. And if you don't have a chair around, you can do this part standing. So basically, I'm going to start first by leading us through the practice that I typically do. Like I said, it's called Shengzhen. It means sacred truth, or it means connecting to love and the heart. And so we always open this practice in the same way. And so I'm going to open the practice the way we always do. And it's basically, we're going to cup our hands like this, except it's the other way. So basically towards our body. We're going to bring them up to our face, and we're going to blow. We're going to move our left hand up to our forehead. Our right hand's going to sit on our lap. And in this moment, the intention is just to feel the body expand. So feel the body expand and connect to the world around. And then bring your left hand down, kind of just straight down your midline, and sit it on top of your right. And then taking a breath in and out very slowly. Okay, so I would invite you first to watch me do this move. So first watch and then follow. So my hands, so you can see them, they're like this. And so I'm going to move them. I'm going to stand up for this part, but you will stay sitting. I'm going to move them out and forward. So I'm doing this sort of motion. So out and forward. And then once they get here, I'm going to open them and I'm slightly leaning my body back. And open them really as far as you don't want to feel like overstrained. So most people don't do well like way back here. It's like wherever you're feeling like comfortable. And then when you bring them together, come together, hands in front of the face and bend the body forward. And then open. And so as I open, watch my hands. Hands go forward and out. So you can see the fingertips kind of do this sort of motion, right? And so I'm here and out. Open and then relax back in. Okay, and let's do this from the top. So hands on the lap and begin. Hands up. And open and relax to center. And breathing wise, usually it's inhale and exhale to center. And inhale. And exhale to center. And one more time. Inhale. And exhale. And this time stay straight forward. And then we can bring our hands kind of come into prayer position. And then they go back into our lap. And then we usually close by blowing again. And then here, I'll mirror you guys, right hand up. And here we want to be connecting. And basically the idea with this is kind of concluding our practice by experiencing and feeling gratitude. So taking a moment to feel grateful about something outside of ourselves, something in the world. And then bringing our hand down in front of our body. And then taking a moment to be grateful for something inside of your body, something that you're just appreciative to yourself for. And then taking a deep breath again and opening your eyes. So this is classically, like I said, is classically done sitting in a chair like this. But this is where it's like somebody's say disabled or really sick and you can't get out of bed, like basically then moving, you can do this like above your body, in a horizontal laying down type of situation. So it's super, super accessible. And whatever sort of practice, like I said, there's tons of Qigong practices out there. Again, find something that works for you. My teacher does have Shengzhen, so it's SHENGJHEN. So if you go to shengzhen.org, there's actually he has a free school. So shengzhen.org is the main website. And then shengzhen.online is the free school. So, this is kind of interesting to you and you're like, yeah, I want to check out more. Shengzhen.online is the free school where you can sign up and get a lot of guidance for how to do some of these movements.
Oh, it's awesome. I just want to stay in the open position for like half an hour. It feels so good.
We've done so many podcasts and I don't think this is so unique and I don't think we've had one yet that has been so actionable. This is incredible information. We're so grateful.
Oh, I'm so happy. Yeah, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Now, Dr. Diane, do you have a way, I know you talked a little bit about this throughout, but do you have a routine that you follow in your daily life? Do you mix things up every day in incorporating these different techniques, or how do you bring this into your own world?
It's such an important question. And for me, I think this is like, in my opinion, like a personality question, in that some people do really, really well with like routines that are always the same. And I tend to do best I tend to personally stick to routines for a while, like sometimes months or sometimes even years. And then all of a sudden one day it's like, I need a new routine. So it does vary. I do have some sort of practice that I'm doing every single day, but there's been times in my life where it's like, this type of like Qigong type of movement has been the main thing. Like 2004, I did that for many years before I rotated out of that and started doing more breath work and these sorts of things. So right now I do have a practice every morning where I wake up and I do breath work and I do visualizations. And then, like I said, I do breath work throughout my day as well when I'm in these random positions, or sometimes I even do breath work when I'm driving, as long as, I don't have my eyes closed and it's simple and I'm still very focused and present and that sort of thing, of course. So that's my practice right now. It's mostly visualization and mostly breath work is what I'm drawn to. But I've had time periods where it's like, Shengzhen, where it's like my number one thing. And I will do that literally every day, sometimes even for an hour, every day. So what I have found for me is that it's important to have something that is engaging my parasympathetic nervous system on a daily basis. Like that to me is like as important as drinking water. And for me personally, knowing my personality, I do a lot better if I give myself permission to say what I'm going to do in that day amongst all of these types of things we can choose from. Having some flexibility is better for my personal commitment. I've also seen people that are very different in personality, that too many choices and then they just do none of them. And that's an important thing to be aware of. Like, it's important to be, aware of if you're more a personality like me, or, you really do better by like Miles, my business partner, he does he does Shengzhen every single day and it never ever wavers, and he does way better. It's like super important to him to have one thing that he is deepening and deepening and deepening and deepening, and that's his personality. So I think there's many different ways, but I would encourage you to pay attention to what is the uniqueness for you and your personality, and how you can formulate some sort of system and structure that you will stick to on a daily basis, even if it's for 45 seconds a day. Yeah.
And remember, your mind is your $1 million ticket, right?
Yes.
Love that. I love that. Well, it's crystal clear to us why your patients are so successful in their wellness journeys. Your unique area of expertise in the whole holistic health is completely underappreciated, but so critical. And we could talk to you all day, and we could practice Qigong with you all day and meditation with you all day. But unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. And we can't thank you enough, Dr. Diane, for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's so good to be with you ladies always. So thank you for the invitation. And I really hope this has helped a lot of people.
Absolutely. And thanks to everyone out there for joining us, sharing your time with us. We really appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.
If you'd like to access other episodes or subscribe so you don't miss a beat, you can find us at nanp.org/NANP-podcast.
Membership in the NANP provides you with a competitive advantage. Whether you're a current practitioner or a student, we want you to become an active, informed leader of the holistic nutrition community, and join today at nanp.org. NANP is very proud to provide the highest level of professional recognition and validation in the holistic nutrition industry through the board certification in holistic nutrition credential. To earn this valuable designation, candidates must demonstrate an exceptional level of knowledge and understanding of holistic nutrition by passing a board exam and documenting client contact hours. Are you ready to boost your credibility with board certification? Visit nanp.org today to apply.
Keep in mind that the information on the NANP podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical or legal advice. The NAMP is not liable or responsible for any harm, damage, or illness arising from the use of the information contained herein. By listening to the information on this podcast, you agree to defend, indemnify, and hold harmless the NAMP and all agents. Copyright NAMP, all rights reserved.